Okay. All right. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 13 of the Famous Musicians Podcast. I'm here with Ronnie Oliver, who is the director of Ensemble NYC and associate choral director at Manhattan School of Music. And I'm just going to get right into it. Here we go. Ronnie, how did you get into music in general?
Well, it started in 5th grade.
Okay.
In my school for the fall semester, we played flutophone, which is a cheap version of a recorder. It's a little plastic thing.
Right.
And so that's how we learned notes and things like that. And then at the end of this fall semester, we had a test.
Right.
Where we had to play Lightly Row.
Yep. Yeah.
To see if we could be in band.
Right.
And so I passed the test, and so I got to be in band. So I started out on trumpet.
Right.
And then I started out on trumpet, and then I started liking this little girl who played clarinet. Mm-hmm. And so I went to the band director and I said, this trumpet thing's just not working out for me. And he said, "Really?" He said, I think you're doing okay." Yeah, well, I don't think I want to stay on this. He said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, can I switch to clarinet?" And he was like, "Really?" And because he had lots of clarinets.
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, I think clarinet would be great." And he said, "Okay." So I did. However, I never got to sit next to the cute little girl who played clarinet, or nothing ever came about it. But I played clarinet badly all through middle school and high school.
Nice.
It helped me with my goal, because my goal at that time was to become a drum major. And so when I got to high school, I tried out for drum major, and I made it, and I was drum major. So that was one of my goals already met.
Right.
But interestingly enough, I started singing at 16, so I was late to that. My uncle encouraged me at church. He spent time with me, teaching me songs and helping me to sing. And then I joined the choir at my high school in my senior year. My high school choir director took a really strong interest in me. She really helped me. She also knew that I was drum major, and so there were times when we would be preparing for a choir concert, and she would say, "Ronnie, come here, conduct the choir while I go out in the auditorium and listen."
Yeah.
And I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I could do a 4 pattern, and that was it. And so I just did that. But because of her and my uncle's mentorship, she helped me to get a voice scholarship at college.
Wow.
And so from that point on, I switched. I liked a kid, and I switched, and I went to the dark side of choral singing from band.
Right, because there are purists that are like, instrumental music versus, that you're not a real conductor or what,
Right, exactly.
Right.
So, so I went into college, and that was when I really knew, though, also that I wanted to teach and conduct for my life's vocation. So that's how I got into that, and the rest of it, I stayed in school, I taught, but that's how I got into it.
That's fantastic. What kind of reminded me of what you were saying is saying that conducting as a senior in high school, the choir, that you really didn't know what you were doing. And I remember actually just this morning I saw a video of Domingo conducting 2012 at La Scala, some operatic aria, and he's conducting the orchestra. And many of the YouTube comments said, "Why is Domingo conducting?" And it's funny. It's like, you assume that Domingo, after a storied operatic career, but no, he really, you could be much older than that, and I still have no idea how to conduct.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
true.
yeah,
The conducting part of this is its own discipline, right? I
yeah.
mean, uh, nothing against any incredible musician at all,
Of course, yeah,
but we there is skill and technique involved, just like in every other thing.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, you're right. It's not just a given that because you're a musician you
I mean,
can.
but I will say, to Domingo's credit, he having knowing all these arias that he was conducting, and certainly having sung them, he could emote wonderfully.
Oh, sure.
And if you could have conducted just on sheer force of emotion and intent alone, he would have been a master.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's a part of what we do as conductors.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah,
Right. Right. Anyway. Okay. Here we go. Okay. Now going to the deep dive real quick.
okay.
Do you seek to create great music for its own sake, or is there a deeper religious, political, socioeconomic message that you are aiming for through the paradigm of music?
Yeah, I believe that actually that music is beauty for the soul. Now that
Yeah.
sounds so cliche and so emotional and all of that stuff and so schmaltzy, but I just don't think that you can create music for its own sake. I
Yeah.
I think I think it's always going to have some effect on the listeners,
Right.
and I think if we ignore that aspect of it, I think we're 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 ignoring a very important part of it. I think it's important for us to spread hope through music,
Yeah.
to bring joy, respite, excitement,
Yeah.
uh, emotion, maybe anger sometimes,
Absolutely.
So I don't know. I I think if I just created it for its own sake, it wouldn't have the communication, it wouldn't have the relationships.
Right.
I Yeah, so I do think there are religious aspects to sacred music. Obviously, that's why
Yep.
it was done. I'm not a big political guy, so I usually try to steer away from the political part because
Yeah.
our lives are so inundated with that on a
Yep.
daily basis that I choose to use music as an escape from that.
Right.
But I do think the socioeconomic part of that. I think if we encourage and help people to find hope, to find encouragement, then they're going to spread that hope. They're going to take it out of the concert hall.
For sure.
They're going to maybe be nicer to somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because of that. I mean, it may not have worldwide implications right then, but I think it might have an effect on one or two people that day.
Right. But that's the means music, the end,
Yeah,
that's what we're really shooting for.
that's what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. What now? I was reminded of something. I don't think he'll object to being taken out of context if he ends up listening to this. There was a tenor that I still look up to. I think he's a fine musician. If he decides to start singing again, I think he's selling cars in Pennsylvania now. But it was tenor Michael Papenchak, and I remember I was talking to Michael Papenchak in the MSM cafeteria when I was finishing up my master's, and we were talking about the role of music, and he was comparing it to other professions, and the short thing that he said, which was like, oh, it's very poignant, and I don't know if I have any response to that, was as a musician, I'm not going to develop the cure for cancer, but I can sing at the gala event celebrating the guy who does. you know,
Yeah.
you know, yeah,
Exactly right. I mean, we all have our own talents and skills and abilities,
right,
and it's up to us to use those abilities in the best way possible to help other people.
right,
Yeah, you're exactly right. I won't discover the cure for cancer,
right,
but I might do a benefit for that might
Right.
help somebody to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So we can be a part of incredibly important events in life.
Right. Yeah.
It's a
Um,
good story.
yeah, no, it's awesome. Let's see. What else? Oh, okay. Here we go. Are you a coffee person or a tea person or neither?
Well, this sounds like I'm being politically correct, but I love
Yeah.
both actually. Now,
Fantastic.
I have to have coffee in the morning.
Right.
Tea won't do it for me in the morning, so I have to have coffee in the morning. But I usually use tea to kind of relax and
Yeah.
enjoy, on a cool winter evening or something
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, but I'm an Earl Grey guy, so it's
But still
just,
caffeinated.
of
Right.
course it's caffeinated. Oh,
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't dream of it.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
No, I don't go for the decaf business.
Yeah. Fabulous. Okay.
It's like, what's the use of that?
Right. Yeah. Fantastic. Now here we go. What are the principal virtues of a great performance, in your opinion, that make it great, and why? If we
Hmm. Yeah, I thought a lot about this, and actually, I think the principal virtue, the main one, is communication.
Yeah.
What is the music saying? In choral music, we have the advantage of the words,
Right.
which I do think that's an advantage because that is part of the language that we use to communicate. Uh, Not to say that purely instrumental music can't communicate. Obviously, it can.
Right.
But also, there's I think, a greater responsibility in choral music to communicate the words
Yeah.
as the composer would have us do that.
Right.
I think words are powerful. The musical, how the composer marries the music and the text, I think is incredibly important. That's one of the ways that we actually judge great music. If
Right.
that marriage is a good marriage,
Yeah.
Right.
What makes the Verdi Requiem? Part of it is that. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And so, however, though, we're not let off the hook with just words and communication. In order for us to communicate well, the musical elements need to be of the highest caliber.
Right.
I mean, if I'm distracted by wrong notes, wrong rhythms, bad intonation,
Yeah.
messiness of all that, then the communication won't be there because I'm thinking about, that just sounds bad.
Right. It gets in the way of the actual message of the piece. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So we have to work very hard
Yeah.
to make sure that those basic elements of communication are there.
For sure.
I mean, I can't communicate in English unless I have a pretty good handle on syntax and what words mean, and
Right.
the order of words, and my inflection of
Right.
that,
Right.
which all goes to a good performance. So
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
communication, and then we have to communicate in an understandable way.
Yeah. I was reminded of when you were saying that when you did the choral sing at Our Lady of Mercy in Forest Hills, and you were talking
Yeah.
about the second movement of the Brahms Requiem, about the funeral procession. How it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just like communicating that. It's like that's a musical portrayal of that particular type of funeral procession. And it's just like, wow.
It was a Byzantine funeral march.
Byzantine. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that, I have to say, when I read that from one of the historians about his interpretation of that, that made second movement of the Brahms Requiem come alive for me, because I was like, wow, that
Yeah.
adds a whole new way of thinking about this. That reluctance for
Right.
for us to give up that person who has passed away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fabulous. Okay, here we go. What do I got? What do I got? Oh, okay. How are you able to lead as a conductor while also listening and being sensitive to what's happening? How can you dictate or initiate while still working with the ensemble you guide?
Yeah, I that's just one of the hardest things we do.
Right. Yeah.
I to stay in the moment,
Right.
right? But be thinking ahead.
Right.
I it's that's just hard.
Yeah.
I guess part of it I depend greatly on the musicians I'm working with. All right,
Yeah.
so I really have to trust them as much as they trust me. I mean, that
Right.
trust factor has to be there. Um, that engagement that we have with each other in a
Right.
performance. If we're, if that conversation that we're having as performer and conductor is an open and honest and trusting one, then there's an opportunity for us to really live in the moment and to respond to something. Now,
Yeah.
I will say this. I do think that the rehearsal process is incredibly important to getting us to that place.
Yeah.
If, you know, my job as a conductor is to get them to the place where they are comfortable and confident to where they can be free to be their own musician, right?
Yeah.
And so if we can get to the point in the through the rehearsal process where they're not tied to the music, where the music starts to come out of them naturally, where they feel a real bond with the music,
Yeah.
then they're going to be more apt to maybe do more of a crescendo than we had, or do less of crescendo. Or maybe we speed up here where we haven't ever done that before. Or
Yeah.
maybe we take more time in this last little thing,
Yeah.
or wow, maybe we needed to accent that double diminished whatever for
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So I do think there's the preparation is the key for this freedom that we can experience in that.
Yeah.
So
It's almost like you're rehearsing a rapport, like to build this environment that's just sort of able to bend to the wind if it comes, Yeah.
Yeah, and some of that too is not just me dictating what happens, but me responding to what they might do too.
Right. Right.
And that's happened before where I'm being like, oh no, they're doing something different here. What am I going to do with that? Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And
Yeah.
I come back to it. Sometimes I think, yeah, that I don't know if I like that or not. Sometimes I've been like, wow, that was much better than we've ever done it.
Yeah.
That was a better choice.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Yeah, no, that's great. Okay, here we go. What are the top 3 performances you have ever witnessed?
Gosh, this is. I'm going to say I'm going to kind of punt a little bit on this.
Yep.
There are 2 that I'd like to talk about, and then the third one I think is kind of just taking this a little bit differently. But
yeah,
the first one that comes to mind is a performance of Rachmaninoff's Bogorodice of Devo.
Yeah, the Vespers. No.
Vespers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I was sitting in the back of the hall of a performance at a workshop.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a high school choral director. I was at a workshop, and the Western Kentucky University Choir, directed by Ken Davis, they sang this. And there's a moment in the piece where it builds up. It's in 4/4 for the most part, but then there's this 6-beat bar that goes to a C major chord.
Right.
It's just a C major chord. But when they got to that, I'm getting this feeling again because it's implanted in my brain. And Joe, this was 35 years ago, maybe.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
When they got to that C major chord, I was like, what is happening to me? I literally had that thought, and I'm not exaggerating at all. It felt like every cell of my body had goosebumps on it, and it was multiplying.
Yeah.
And it was building through my body, and I was like, oh my God, what's happened?
Yeah.
It was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had in my life.
Yeah.
And it was at that moment that I said to myself, I have got to know how they did that.
Yeah.
And that was the decision that I made. And right after that, I applied to start my master's with that person, that director, that conductor. And I went through that process. I was accepted, and I quit my job. And I quit my job, and I started studying with him. And that was that was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life about that.
Yeah.
So that was an integral, important part of my musical journey.
For sure.
Then the second one happened just, gosh, I want to say maybe 4 years ago.
Okay.
And the Berlin Radio Choir, under the direction of Simon Halsey,
Yep.
They did a performance of Brahms' Requiem in the White Lights Festival.
Yep.
And they did it over at St. John the Divine in one of their, not in the cathedral, but in one of their larger halls there on the campus. And you walked in, and they said, okay, you can put your shoes over there. And I was like, what? So the whole audience took their shoes off, and then we were just milling around in the whole hall.
Yeah.
Talking to each other, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, boom, boom, the piano, the introduction started, and we were like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And then the singers were amongst us in regular clothes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they started singing. And it was like, oh my gosh. They did the whole performance that way, where they had it choreographed, where they would do things, and they would motion to us to sit down. They had pillows.
Yeah.
To do that. And they did this was done obviously with the two piano version.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, not the two piano, the four-hand version.
Right.
Four-hand piano version. And the piano was on a platform that rolled around, so they could even take that into the center and do it like that. And the conductor was on the side.
Uh-huh.
And his assistant conductor was on the other side. So they still conducted to keep everybody together. But it was one of the most, I love that work anyway.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorite pieces. But it was so incredible how they performed it like that. It was by memory, you know, and of course, but just watching them do that through it and all around us.
Yeah.
You know, it was, I just applaud them. I wish they would resurrect that again and bring that and do that again, because it was just an incredible experience.
That's fabulous.
Then the third thing, I'm just going to say, when I was thinking about this, I kept thinking about some of the rehearsals that I've conducted, and with some of the groups I've been fortunate to work with.
Right. Some
of those moments have happened in the rehearsals. And I will probably say, as a conductor, the majority of my great moments have happened in the rehearsal rather than in the performance. I've been very fortunate and have been able to do experience great performances. But those times in rehearsal where it's like, oh my gosh, that's it. And
Yeah.
I would say, man, I wish people were here to hear that now.
Yeah.
And but I'm so glad that we experienced that together.
Yeah.
So I will say, that's one of I'm going to put that in my top three
For sure.
because I've been able to experience that not only with I've been very fortunate with church choirs, with community choirs, with high school festival choirs, with middle school choirs, with professional choirs. There have been moments like that in each of those things. So, you know, I know some people say, "Oh, well, don't you want to conduct a professional choir and be able to do whatever you want to do?" Yeah, sure I do. And I'm very fortunate to do that with Ensemble NYC.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But I tell you what, some of those performances you were involved in with Florilegium Chamber
Yeah.
Choir here in New York had that same quality.
Yeah.
And there were moments there was like, oh my gosh, that's it.
Yeah.
Some moments that I've had with a 300 voice high school festival choir that just sang so beautifully and so energetically.
Yeah.
Gosh, I wouldn't trade anything for those
Yeah.
moments.
Yeah. Fabulous. Okay, here we go. Let's see. Oh, this is okay, here we go. It's a real long question. As a younger person, I think people are entranced by having great physical beauty, which is usually something that has little to no correlation with the actual goodness and merit to the person that possesses it. And with age and wisdom, we are able to perceive inner beauty. What are some things that seem beautiful or cosmetically perfect about choirs in general, but often mask things which are actually important about a choral ensemble?
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to kind of come back to communication here
Yeah.
because right notes and right rhythms are never enough.
Right. Yeah.
Good choirs can do right notes and right rhythms.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, too many choirs stop there.
Yeah.
They never go beyond right notes and right rhythms, which that's a formidable task. I get that.
Yes.
It really can be. But if they don't go beyond that, then they will never experience beauty.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, a paint by numbers thing has all the elements, and I can put the right color in the right place and all that stuff, but it's not Monet.
Yeah.
It's not. It doesn't have the innate beauty of that. No matter how wonderfully I'm able to fill in all those blanks with the right color and
Right.
do all that, it's still not going to have that. So I think too many choirs focus on a perfect performance
Yeah.
where notes and the rhythms are right. We don't mess up. We come in exactly right. We do all the diction exactly right. We do all that. And that's perceived as a beautiful performance.
Right.
But I'll go back to a crude saying is when you've had steak, hamburgers just doesn't get it anymore.
Yeah, it just doesn't cut it. Yeah.
I mean, I love a good hamburger, but boy,
Yeah.
a good steak, there you
Yeah.
go. It's got so much more to it.
Right.
And so I think that's what I would say. That when great choirs, somebody told me one time, they said, here's a bad choir, down on a lower level. A good choir is just a little bit above that with good right notes and right rhythms. But a great choir, the difference between a good choir and a great choir is significant.
Yeah.
It's that phrasing, it's that nuanced dynamics, it's that inflection of the text, it's that communication, it's that it's the singers or the performers embracing the music.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say.
For sure.
That and that's something that I think people, it's one of those things that people will say, how do you know if it's good or not? And the only thing you can, or how do you know if it's great or not? You just know.
That's what else is there to say?
You know,
Yeah.
Somebody asked me, how do you know Anne's the person you want to marry?
Yeah.
You know, back when we were engaged, and I was like, I just know.
Yeah.
I don't know how to quantify that exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I think part of the quantification of great music is, yes, right notes, right rhythms, because of the communication, but the way that's put together.
Yeah.
What makes one cake better than the other? Well, it's what the ingredients are, right? It's and how those ingredients are put together, and
Right.
if you cook it for 5 minutes more or 5 minutes less, you know?
Yeah.
Or,
Right.
I mean, it's so nuanced.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say about that.
Fantastic. Okay, here we go. So close here. Okay. How dependent upon accolades or recognition is the enjoyment of music making? And then here's my giant example. Is it the case that while you shouldn't be motivated to do anything because we'll pay a lot of money or make you famous, that if you were self-sufficient as the world's greatest cellist that could do the most superior version of the Dutia Twastrophe, but you were in a wooden shack in Alberta, Canada, that it wouldn't mean anything because there was no one else to appreciate it?
Well, gosh, accolades and recognition are just great.
Yeah, yeah, right. They're wonderful.
Well, they are, and because and mainly it's because that you have affected somebody else for the better.
Yeah,
and that's why those accolades and recognition come, because you have made a positive impact on someone through what you do.
Right.
And yes, it's nice and what's the word? Required, I guess, sometimes that you are paid for that.
Yeah.
And that's okay too.
Right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
But and you know, they help you continue to make music.
For sure.
You know?
Right. We live in a capitalist society. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
So those things are okay.
Yeah.
I will say, just like you said, we shouldn't do it for those reasons.
Right.
Ultimately, and because if we did, then it becomes a very selfish, narcissistic thing. It becomes just about me wanting recognition.
Right.
And me needing that, which we all need that.
Right. Right.
But that's not the reason we do something that helps other people, I think.
Right.
I don't think there's any real satisfaction that comes from that type of performing.
Right.
We may have it for a little while, but it won't last.
Yeah.
And, you know, gosh, if I were independently wealthy, gosh, that would certainly free me up to do whatever I wanted to do and pay other musicians to do that. And
right. Exactly.
Have a great life together and, you know, do that. Wouldn't that be great? You know?
Yeah.
But there's also a good point made for me not to for me to work for that too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's merited that they're whatever you've gotten is through the pursuit of great art or great music.
Work is a good thing. Working for something is a good thing. And also, I think music can mean something to each individual, and you don't need an audience. So I do think performing in a wooden shack in Alberta, Canada can be incredibly meaningful.
Right. Yeah.
And just because there's no one else there, you're there.
Yeah.
And you're a person, and you can appreciate that, and you know what's good and what can be important. Yeah.
For sure. All right, fabulous. And the very last thing. Oh yeah. Are there any upcoming performances that you'd like to share?
Well, just to reiterate what I said at the top in our conversation was that Ensemble NYC we're going to be sending out what we're calling a moment of respite and gratitude. That's going to feature 3 of our performers We're going to put that out on our social media channels and
Excellent.
send that out on our newsletter. In December, we're going to do a virtual choir performance of actually Bach's Dona Nobis Pacem.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're going to do that in December, and we're including. I've invited everyone who's ever sung with us in the past 2 years, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Doing that. And then we're also hoping to do a live stream performance of solos and duets in February. So that's what we have on track. And folks can go to ensemblenyc.us, our website, to they can sign up for our newsletter and to get information about these things.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
I'll put a link for the upcoming events. If anyone wants to donate to it, anything, I'll make sure I put it. That's kind of the point of the podcast too. So make sure I do that.
Oh, thanks, Joe.
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. Very good. And I'll have I'll try to see if I can get one of the public domain earlier classical Renaissance works, something right before this interview, and then maybe I'll have something to just right at the end of it to just sort of bookend it.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to look at those YouTube things?
Not yet. Maybe I'll I could probably just
Well, all of those things that we have on there are public domain.
Fabulous. Great.
Or even the Jake Runestad piece,
right.
Which is, he gave us permission to put that on there and to distribute it. So
fantastic.
You can pick anything on there. I mean, there's the first movement from Bach Magnificat. On there, there's the last movement from the Magnificat. There's the fourth movement from Brahms' Requiem. There's a Handel, one of the Handel coronation anthems on there.
Okay, yeah, that's fabulous.
So you've got a variety.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic.
Whatever you want to pick there is fine. Yeah.
Fantastic. And give me 1 second. Thank you for listening. Tune in. Yada, yada, yada. Talk to you soon.